What was your school's faculty secret? A shocking percentage of the senior class was sleeping with teachers. Very small school. Homeschooled? Alright buddy, you've eat your last whore. There was a hot teacher at my school. There were always rumors the sixth formers had slept with her. Always a friend of a friend. Everyone assumed it was playground bullcrap, and then a couple years back, 10 years after I left school, she gets busted for sleeping with a student and banned from teaching. All the rumors were true. She got away with it for 15 odd years because schoolboys are horny, thirsty as duck. Haha. High school QB was sleeping with the football coach's wife for 2 years before the coach found out everyone else knew. Girl in my grade was doing extra credit every day with the new math teacher our whole junior and senior year. They married shortly after we graduated. No one was surprised. 8 years later they are still together. Too bad the wife probably won't be charged or even discredited with child predatory charges. Same thing happened at my school, except it was a female health pay teacher sleeping with a 17-year-old guy. Just got fired. She didn't get charged with anything but didn't get anything in the divorce, and the coach was the money maker, so still bit her pretty good. One of our male teachers took in a girl student from an abusive home and she lived with him for the rest of senior year with his wife. After she graduated, he divorced his wife and married the former student. They are still together to my knowledge. Also, this wasn't like a getting with the hot young teacher thing. He was a homely man in his 50s. He was later fired for a similar situation that happened years prior after the previous student came forward. Also, apparently our teachers had their own most likely list that featured gems like most likely to get a life sentence and most likely to fall for a Ponzi scheme. 2 male teachers ducked the married school psychologist. She remarried one of them after she left the school. At once, asking the important questions. At the school my wife once taught at, the principal was very much of the mind that if you were a young female teacher, you were supposed to adore him at all times. She didn't really play that game, and so he kept writing her up for the smallest infractions. He was also very quick to remind the teachers that he knew people in the town, and was thus immune to all retribution. And then he was caught, quite literally, having an affair with the wife of someone who worked in central office. About 20 years later now, he's still managing the gas station that's right down the road from the school. Back in high school, we had a campus similar to a college campus. Instead of one large building, it was several buildings laid out. One building was dedicated to math, another for science, etc. Anyway, there were tunnels built underground that connected all the buildings that no one was allowed to use. Only faculty members knew where and how to access them. Evidently, they were built during the Cold War in case the United States was under attack. My uncle had a great story about secret tunnels at his college. They were supposed to be closed, but some students discovered an entry. It was a whole network, dating from WWII, between the buildings and the church in the middle of the campus. The local priest was a terrifying person. Every Sunday his sermon was a shouting performance about the evil he saw everywhere and in everyone. Satan, I know you are close, very close. Where are you? So one day he heard a cavernous voice coming from the tombs. I'm right here, in this church. My 3rd grade teacher Mr. V was gay. Not a big deal now, but in a small town in Michigan in 1973, coming out was not exactly an option. The thing is, he was everyone's favorite teacher. Kind, caring, enthusiastic, funny, and really good at his job. We called him Mr. V because his last name was too hard for 3rd graders to pronounce. Something like Vasilovsky, and he eventually had his last name legally changed to V. Many years later, when I was on a break from college in the 80s, I went out to dinner with him and his friend, and it dawned on me. Oh, Mr. V is gay. Pretty sure the faculty knew, and probably the more observant parents, but if I remember correctly it was never an issue. Art teacher's staff room always smelled like pot. They always denied smoking pot. They smoked a lot of pot. Spent most of high school wanting to become an art teacher because they sat around listening to The Cure and looking cool and indifferent. Their staff room was in a small dark building at the end of campus and looked really grunge. One time we were loudly talking outside their window, and an art teacher came out to tell us to move along because we were ruining their jam session. Each year the school would take the year 7 students, first year of high school, on a ski trip. The year I went, me and my friend were put in a hotel room where our balcony directly overlooked the balcony of a teacher who I'll call Mr. C. One night me and my friend went out onto the balcony in the middle of the night and saw Mr. C and another teacher, who we'll call Miss J, full on making out in the room. Curtains were wide open, lights were on, we could see everything. Of course the next morning at breakfast we told all the other students around, one of whom was dumb brave enough to ask Miss J how long her and Mr. C had been together. Both teachers denied it flatly, and when the trip was over we had an assembly where our head teacher asked us all to stop sharing the baseless rumors from the trip, told us that Mr. C and Miss J were colleagues and nothing more. Fast forward 7 years, my year graduates so all students from that trip were no longer in the school, and the following term the school sent home a letter informing parents that Miss J will now be going as Mrs. C. We later found out the 2 teachers had gotten drunk and hooked up on the trip exactly as we'd expected, and later got married. 2 married teachers worked at the high school. The wife was hot and the dude looked like a ducking toad. The dude paid my 16-year-old friend $35 once a week to mow his lawn and duck the wife while he watched from the closet. It never came out. Eventually she divorced him and moved away. I don't know if this is what you're asking for, but here I go. There was a teacher, not mine, who would give alcohol to students and teachers if they paid money. They would hand shots in carved out books that she would lend to students. She gave out bottles in brown lunch bags for people who forgot their lunch. The only reason she got caught was because her son rapped a girl and found evidence of it in their house. Edit. There were accusations that the teachers were supporting rap accusations, like WTF sounds ridiculous I know, and found out she was selling alcohol. That the reason that computer accounts and security and general IT stuff was a mess was that the old IT guy intentionally complicated things for the sake of job security, and that complication could not save him when the cops found CP on his computer. So he was arrested and nobody knew how the system was set up, so they scrambled for years to keep things working. At one point all the seniors had permission to see not only their own individual files, but also all freshman files. The new IT people, several years after taking on this mess, didn't seem to know this was happening. We had a teacher who had posed for Playboy while in college, made centerfold. Wasn't really widely known until one day someone had found her centerfold and taped it to one of those roll down maps in classrooms. She rolled it down, burst into tears and ran out of the classroom. She was replaced the next day. There was this substitute who everyone loved in elementary school because he gave us candy and he looked like Santa Claus. He always favored the girls and had nicknames for them. I was his little helper Dart. It always struck me as odd because when we got to middle school he would still remember my friend for singing in a Christmas play in 4th grade. As we got older, no one liked him except a few girls. Everyone knew he was a creep. He would substitute at the elementary, middle, and high school at my school and another close to us. Turns out he got arrested for like 100 gigabytes of cheese pizza found in the back of his car and he had reports of touching kids. It's crazy because no one was shocked either, not even the teachers. He was talking to my geometry teacher and my teacher told him to stay away from his kids or he'd kick his Santa Claus ass back to the North Pole. This isn't actually a secret, but rather a rumor that went around school that was a secret for a while. But this year an art teacher at my school walked in one day very disoriented and red-eyed. He was pulled out by the vice principal and wasn't seen again for several months. During this time lots of rumors circulated that he came to school high and had weed in his car and this went on for a while. We had a long-term sub and no one knew what was going on, until one of my friends revealed to me that the gym teacher confirmed those rumors. Turns out, we were all wrong. Poor guy got into a car accident and got a concussion and came into school that day anyway. He spent months in the hospital recovering. The head of the English department was a lunatic who barely taught. I was in his AP English class, and we never finished getting through any of the books we were supposed to be reading. Instead, we would get long lectures on whatever the hell he felt like rambling about. On the mild end was descriptions of his World of Warcraft obsession. On the crazier end was him holding an imaginary wiener over his crotch and using it to slice imaginary bread. A statement about how women were going to cause the end times because we refused to have enough children to sustain the world. Oversharing about how his female students reminded him of old flames. Your name is Sarah? Sarah was the name of my first love. Ranting endlessly about his 2 divorces, including telling us once that if he'd owned a gun during divorce number 2, his ex-wife and all of her friends would be dead. And yet for whatever reason, we all just accepted that that was how he was. Even the AP kids, since, if nothing else, he was a lenient grader. I looked him up recently and he has since retired, and his Twitter profile lists him as retired teacher. Twice divorced. Thanks for watching, boys. I hope you have a great day.